right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what other movies inspired it. And today on the show, we're looking at a VOD movie, The Standoff at Sparrow Creek. We don't do a lot of movies that aren't theatrically released here on the show, but, you know, with the way things are going with Hollywood and with streaming and Netflix and all that kind of stuff, I have a feeling we're going to end up doing more and more of them as the time goes on. But, yeah, this is one that we watched, me and my co-host for the episode, David Quinones. I was out there in Miami staying with him for a live episode of Bird Road, which you should definitely go check out. But I was out there, and while we were just hanging out at his house, we ended up watching this movie, and then we decided, why not do an episode on it? And I want to say right now at the top of the show, this episode is going to sound a little different from a usual episode of Piecing It Together because we recorded it on his RodeCaster Pro. This was our first attempt at testing out this piece of equipment, which kind of mixed results, but you'll hear, make up your own mind on what you think about it and whether or not you think it's a good thing for recording these podcasts. I think I'm going to stick to my usual computer situation, but you know, for people out there starting podcasts, it might be a good thing for you. But about today's movie, The Standoff at Sparrow Creek. This is a movie about a bunch of militiamen who, after a mass shooting at a police funeral, they go into hiding at a warehouse, and they know that one of them is responsible for the mass shooting, and they're trying to figure out who. It is a very tense film. Really great looking film, and it's really cool. It's something it was not on my radar, but Q had been talking about it, and he said we should watch it, and I'm glad we did because I do like these kind of movies, like these slow burn, just really intense type movies. So it's a really cool one. It's definitely a movie you guys should check out. And let's jump into the conversation about The Standoff at Sparrow Creek.
All right, we're recording.
We're rolling?
We're rolling.
All right, so with us today, actually, we're in his room right now, is David Quinones. How you doing, buddy?
Can you be a little more professional and call it a studio, which is what it is?
Well, this is technically a room. It's not the room.
Literally every room is a room.
Well, is that true? Is every room a room?
I mean, how can I not be me?
I mean,
how am I not myself?
I'm in Miami right now because we did a live Bird Road last night, which I did tell you guys. I bet Q doesn't think I did, but
I listened to the episodes.
Did you?
Know, yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I'm here for 3 days here in Miami, staying with them, and we had a bunch of movies lined up to watch, and one of those movies was The Standoff at Sparrow Creek, and I had not actually heard about this, but Q wanted to watch it, and he wanted me to watch it with him, and I'm glad he did. It was a good movie.
Yeah, you liked it?
I did. I
trying to get you into some stuff while you're here in town, and it's hard because it's hard to you're polite, and it's hard to gauge if you really like a thing. You'll just be like, yeah, it's pretty good, dude.
It's pretty good.
It's good.
Yeah.
And you'll never just be like, this is bad. I'm trying to remember the last time that we were watching something and you were just like, let's not watch this.
Yeah.
It's definitely happened, but it's always very polite and it's always couched in the suggestion of doing something else.
I'm pretty easygoing, dude. I mean, that's kind of my thing, right? It's a possibility, dude.
It's a possibility, dude. Is a famous David Rosen, Jewish Dave saying. That's his motto. It's a possibility.
It's true. But this is going to be a little bit different from our usual episode. I mean, we literally just watched this movie. We made a few notes, and now we are testing out the RodeCaster Pro, and we figured we'd do a quick little piecing it together episode on this movie because, like I said, I think we both really enjoyed it.
And we have a new toy.
We have a new toy to play with. So why don't we go ahead and go with your first puzzle piece, Q?
So my first puzzle piece do you want to talk about what this movie was a little bit? Or?
I do that in the intro usually.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So my first puzzle piece for this movie was one that is on point thematically. Something that, while it doesn't line up exactly with the motivations of the characters or the precise plotting of the characters, it does line up with the theme of what they go through. And it's a movie that I think a lot of folks know. It's 1993's Killing Zoe, which was a great movie starring Eric Stoltz, young Julie Delpy, and directed by Roger Avery. So to revisit that movie, if you haven't seen it already, it's about a bank heist gone wrong, and the main character, Eric Stoltz, who plays Zed, is flown over from America to Paris to help commit this bank robbery, this large bank heist. And throughout the movie, he, I don't want to spoil this almost 30-year-old movie for you, but just suffice to say that he has some misgivings about this crew that he's hooked up with that includes a childhood friend of his who's sort of gone off the rails in adulthood. And, Zed himself is no angel. Obviously, he's a safecracker and has done that a lot. And what happens is, again, I'll skip the details, but the bank heist, presumably, as you would think, starts to fall apart. And a lot of it is a set piece that happens within this huge, beautiful bank in Paris. And each character begins to sort of doubt each other. A lot of them turn on each other. And so thematically, you have this group of sort of rogues, each of them flawed and profoundly evil in their own way, who, again, they turn on each other. There's paranoia. There is distrust that gets sowed throughout this situation, and it ultimately ends in tragedy. So that was my first puzzle piece, was Killing Zoe, which, if you haven't seen it, by the way, fucking great movie, highly stylized, really fun, sometimes very dark movie, but I would recommend that movie too.
I think that theme is going to run through a lot of our puzzle pieces about people that are just not good people, and none, they're very shady, everybody not trusting one another, and it definitely is going to come up quite a bit during this conversation. And it's funny, I before I get to my first puzzle piece, while I was sitting there on the couch trying to come up with some, I couldn't think of any other movies that deal with militiamen. It was a little tough. I think I was almost going to mention the Waco miniseries, but I mean, I guess I am mentioning it right now, but it's not really a puzzle piece, just kind of a quick mention. But, really, as far as like actual movies where they deal with militias, which is a pretty big thing in the news lately. Yeah. I mean,
obviously, you live in Vegas, where there was the recent multiple cases of the Bundy clan. Where they had several standoffs with federal authorities and Bureau of Land Management. The Waco situation obviously was not a militia,
right? Not necessarily.
It was a group of a cult, a zealots, group of zealots, and I think again. The one that I think most people will, I'm trying to think of depictions of militias in popular culture, and I think the one that I think of the most is not a live action movie, but a documentary, Fahrenheit 9/11. I'm sorry, not Fahrenheit 9/11. It was Bowling for Columbine.
Oh yeah.
Where Michael Moore visits his native Flint, Michigan, and one of the threads that he tugs at during the course of that documentary is the proliferation of militias in Michigan, and this movie takes place in Michigan. So
absolutely. I'm going to actually put Bowling for Columbine on the final list. Might as well keep it on there. So my first puzzle piest, and goes right.
That's a good choice. Guaranteed that the writer of this movie watched Bowling for Columbine. If they don't already have firsthand knowledge or understanding of militias, then that's sort of a Zen cone for to know.
Unless the writer was rooting for this militia, and then that's a whole nother story. But but yeah, my first puzzle piece it goes right along with your Killing Zoe, and that is the most obvious one, which is Reservoir Dogs, the Quentin Tarantino film, his first directing movie, and about again a heist gone wrong. And all the criminals, they meet up together and they're trying to find out, who's the rat, basically. And that's basically what we're doing here, except for with a militia instead of straight up criminals. But there's a big shootout at a police funeral, and they're trying to find out who's responsible because they know, quote unquote, that one of them has done it. And so they're trying to find out who. The tensions are super high throughout the movie. It's definitely one of these slow burn type of movies where we're slowly but surely learning about all these characters, while at the same time the tensions between them all are continuing to grow, and also takes place in a warehouse. So that definitely is right there, a pretty big parallel.
And one of the things that we were talking about as we were watching this was, and again, this is similar to right on topic with Reservoir Dogs, is the exciting possibility of film within these sort of constrained, stripped down budgets. I mean, you can't help but look at a movie like Sparrow Creek and also look at a movie like Reservoir Dogs and think like, what a cool creative idea that you can pull off probably for like $1 million,
right?
You know, like $1 million movie that is just absolutely stunning,
which is less than the budget of our podcast.
Yeah, just a little bit. Most people don't realize we have a $985,000 a year budget for
here at the All Points West studio.
All Points West Studios. But it gets you excited when you see like somebody doing something with very little, and you see this creation come to life that required like not a whole lot of investment.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I guess that brings me to my next puzzle piece, which would be my next puzzle piece is 2004's The Machinist, which of course was famous for Christian Bale's just ghastly, over the top weight loss. It's a psychological thriller by Brad Anderson, written by Scott Kosar, along with Bale. The film also stars Jennifer Jason Leigh, and don't ever remember this movie actually being in the theaters. I do remember a sort of a companion movie around this time was The Woodsman with Kevin Bacon, and both of them tonally felt like this movie. They felt like Sparrow Creek. They were very zoomed in. They were very tight. They were very deliberate. They built tension with the slightest body movements, and the cinematography reminded me a lot of Sparrow Creek. Very dark, and I know we were making fun of the fact that we were watching this, and I know you want to get on your on your soapbox and talk about the fact that we watched this during the day in a living room flooded with light, yes. And it was a completely dark movie. It was a visually.
A lot of blacks.
A lot of blacks and dark blues and grays washed out by, my sunroom in my house. So, which is not ideal for, no TV gets watched in my house during the daytime. You have to understand that.
Right.
So, anyway, a dark, sort of thoughtful, deliberate, very focused on detail.
Yeah.
In the cinematography. Reminded me of The Machinist. I could also bring up the like I said before, The Woodsman and Kevin Bacon lesser. I think of those two movies as almost companions.
Yeah.
Like Fatally Flawed Men in the early 2000s.
Right.
Movies. Yeah. That's my puzzle piece number 2. Do you remember The Machinist?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And to continue with that point again, these are movies that look great for relatively little money, it seemed like stories that you could tell on an independent level. And unfortunately, like you said, my soapbox right now, a lot of these kind of movies are going direct to people's sunrooms, and instead of a nice, beautiful theater where you could see that gorgeous cinematography and see, that kind of image the way it's meant to be seen. But I'm not going to go on too. If you want to hear me bitch about it more, you can go to our Piecing It Together, a movie discussion group, and I'll bitch all day about it.
So what's your next one, Dave?
My next puzzle piece is one which actually in itself, if I had been doing Piecing It Together back then, I would have used Reservoir Dogs as a puzzle piece for this movie. It is Free Fire from 2016. It's an A24 film.
I haven't seen this one.
Directed by Ben Wheatley, starred Charlton Copley, it's always hard to say his name, and Brie Larson and Armie Hammer. Cillian Murphy also, I forgot he was in it. But yeah, it's about a bunch of arms dealers that go to...
not Cillian Murphy?
Cillian Murphy? I don't know. Is it?
It's Cillian Murphy. I feel like it's Cillian Murphy.
Like the beer? Killian's?
Yeah, like Killian, or just that's an Irish name, Killian, but with K usually.
We're going to have to look into this.
Maybe it is a...
all you listening at home, write in and let us know.
Yeah, post on the message board.
But yeah, no, they're all meeting in a warehouse to do a big gun deal, but it goes wrong. Now, where this movie is much more of a slow burn, Sparrow Creek is much more of a slow burn, and we don't really get to any kind of a shootout. It's more about the tension and the dialogue and all that, and the character development. Free Fire is just a nonstop hour and a half long shootout. But it starts though under somewhat similar pretenses, again minus a militia, but definitely bad people meeting up to do bad things. And so yeah, Free Fire is my second puzzle piece, and also in tone very much, again, aside from the fact that we're going in different directions in plot, but tone wise it felt kind of similar. A lot of snappy dialogue, a lot of really well written characters.
Yeah, and in Sparrow Creek, I wouldn't call the dialogue snappy, but it was definitely inspired, and it felt lived in. It felt like very lived in dialogue. Like every character, you didn't really get a lot of context of who they were, apart from the fact that they were these archetypes of the kind of white men who would join a Michigan militia,
right.
And they were different archetypes, but they all they were like phenotypes that fell underneath this larger stereotype of like the guys that join those things, and you didn't know them at all up front. You didn't get a lot of background information on them except what they offered up, but somehow the dialogue really, like, it felt lived in. Like, yeah, yes. Okay, that guy, that's the thing that guy would say.
You know what, I'm curious, and I don't want to derail this too much, but I noticed when I was looking this up on IMDb after we watched the reviews, it was only like around a 5 or a 6. And I'm wondering if people who don't like it are people who would find themselves identifying with militias and stuff like that. I wonder if they're getting annoyed by this.
Rotten Tomato reviews.
No, the IMDb reviews, because it seems like critically it's doing pretty well.
Yeah, critically it's doing well. I would guess that the people that watched it probably were hoping for something that might. I'm going to say there's two different types of people who were disappointed in this movie. They're the people who were hoping that this would be more of a lionization or an examination or something that exalts this point of view, or like this political, this sort of conservative, far right wing point of view, and it didn't do that.
Right.
It actually, everybody is evil in this movie. The cops are bad. And their counterparts in all of these militia organizations. Briefly, we see gangs of Ku Klux Klan members in a brief flashback. They're horrible. Everybody's bad.
Yeah, I like that.
And so I think that they were expecting that. And the thing about those kind of people is that they don't like that. They don't like that kind of complex thought. It's the kind of thing where they want there to be a clear cut good and evil, and they want to identify with the people that are on the side of good. And they were probably upset with that. I think that there's probably also a group that was of people who saw this and were hoping that it would be a more overt, an overt storyline about like political themes that were hoping somebody would be like invoke the name of Trump in the movie, in the actual, which would have been so on the nose, so bad.
Yeah,
and coming from somebody who has a podcast about politics, I can tell you that would have been so corny.
Yeah,
it would have been like straight cheeseball shit. And I'm glad they didn't do it. I'm glad that this happened in a not an apolitical world. This happened in a world where the politics of the people involved are so much bigger than an administration or a president or a movement. It's people who are decidedly outcasted from society because of their belief. It's like it's much more like QAnon type stuff. Like this is the logical end for people that go down those rabbit holes of conspiracy theory and isolation. I also thought that was a brilliant theme, a theme that was brilliantly brought out about isolation and how we live in this era of isolation. People,
what that does to you,
how it dulls you around the edges or sharpens you around the edges and makes you worse. I mean, we're social creatures, and if your entire social interaction is weaving in and out of these kind of groups, it's corrosive, and toxic and bad.
It's absolutely true. Absolutely. What's your next puzzle piece?
So my final puzzle piece was a more sort of obscure movie, and older. This was from a movie from 1996. The first two puzzle pieces I brought up were things that spoke to theme, puzzle pieces that spoke to theme and also to tone. And this one is more directly on the nose of plot. And this is a movie called The Siege at Ruby Ridge, which was a docudrama television movie that it aired on across two nights on CBS back in 1996. It starred Randy Quaid, Laura Dern, Kirsten Dunst when she was very young. I think she was probably like 15 or something like that at that time. She had to be really young at that point. And this was a very good made-for-TV movie. Not a shitty one. But nonetheless, it was still a made-for-TV movie because this was at that time where real-life things that happened, big news stories, would turn into TV movies or they would turn into miniseries. Mm-hmm. And they weren't optioned in the same way that they are now.
Yeah.
So
they didn't turn into Lifetime movies, which is what happens now.
So this was a movie that I only vaguely really remember, but it did talk about. Obviously, it covered the events of 1996 and the actual Ruby Ridge massacre, and which happened in 1992. I should be clear. For those that don't know, it was an 11-day siege that happened in Idaho. Members of Randy Weaver's family and friends, Kevin Harris, resisted these agents of the Marshal Service and hostage rescue team and the FBI. And just you can read about what happened at Ruby Ridge, but it was a real life thing. We were talking earlier about things that inform the modern perception of militia. And if you're old enough and you remember 1992, you remember this being a huge story that happened also right around the same time that Waco happened, and the David Koresh and that whole imbroglio went down. This was a time when I think we as a country thought that there was going to be a lot more things like this. There was going to be a lot more walling off and closing off of ourselves. And sort of domestic terrorist actions and things like this. I have a personal theory that the advent of the internet took that loneliness and the despair that people were using to join these kind of groups and gave it a different outlet, and now and dispersed it and sort of atomized it. And that's why we didn't see many more of these kind of Ruby Ridge or David Koresh, Waco type of things.
Right.
It's right around the time that the internet really started becoming popular and getting into people's homes. It was around the advent of like Usenet groups and forums and things like that, where you could kind of lose yourself. And if you were somebody who was
now they're just making YouTube videos all day.
Right. Yeah. 4.5 hour YouTube videos about, like ancient Greece and shit like that, and the cradle of democracy and shit like that.
I love that we're just mocking their core right now, just to their soul, right?
So yeah, my final puzzle piece was 1996's The Siege at Ruby Ridge, which while having virtually nothing in common cinematically with this movie, obviously informs the plot.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, absolutely. It's really interesting. And, yeah, I mean, definitely it seems like the closest, plot wise to this movie. Right on. Well, my last puzzle piece then, one of my favorite movies of the last few years is the 10 Cloverfield Lane from Dan Trachtenberg.
It's the one in space, right?
Yes.
The really good one.
Yes. Thanks for bringing that up on this podcast, asshole. No, it is the one in a bunker. You and
I are the only two people who stand for True Detective Season 2. Yeah. Will you be the guy who stands for Cloverfield Paradox?
If you are, do not contact me. I don't want to hear from you. But no, 10 Cloverfield Lane. obviously there's a lot of differences between that movie and this movie, but one thing I was thinking is if 10 Cloverfield Lane starred 6 John Goodmans, maybe it would be a little bit closer. A bunch of whacked out militia people who, stockpiling everything for that big doomsday scenario. And here it is. It's here. And, we were right to be doing this all along. But again, we go in very different directions from that point in Standoff at Sparrow Creek. But still, that is my final puzzle piece. And that brings us to the finished puzzle, which is all the movies we just talked about, which includes Killing Zoe, Bowling for Columbine, Reservoir Dogs, The Machinist, Free Fire, The Siege at Ruby Ridge, and 10 Cloverfield Lane. So, like I said, it's going to be a little bit of a quick episode. This is
the Woodsman.
We could throw the Woodsman in there on the list.
I always kind of think, I don't know why, I always think of those two movies as companions because they came out, I think, the same year, or if not, like.
Did we see them both together?
We saw the Woodsman.
I know
together.
We saw the Woodsman together.
I didn't learn about the Machinist until a couple years after it was out.
Oh, okay.
And so I don't think we saw that together.
All right. But both great movies, really.
It's very rare. From the years 1998 to 2005, there weren't a lot of movies that Dave and I did not see together.
It's true. It's very true. But yeah, I'm really glad we watched this. I did enjoy it quite a bit. Me, I like things that are dark and I like things a little nihilistic
and thoughtful and messed up.
Yeah. It was well done. This was this guy's first movie, Henry Dunham. He'd only done some shorts, I believe, but his first as a director.
Reviews about his directing, which said, I don't know if you felt this way, but it said like this is very look at me making my first movie type direction. But what's wrong with that? That you should strive to do that, right? Look at me, I'm doing my first movie.
If I was to criticize anything, and again, this is also I'm not sure that it's a bad thing situation, but the first 30 minutes of the movie, I kept thinking that this reminded me of just some like one of a million prestige TV shows. Like every big new TV show that comes out.
Kind of like, and don't forget, those shows have so much money.
Yeah.
But it did look like maybe a
True Detective
or something like that.
Yeah.
Like sort of just one of these generic, I don't want to call Ray Donovan generic because it's a good show.
Right. They're good shows, but there's so many of them and it's like a thing now. It's such like a trend to be dark and be, all that kind of stuff.
Quiet, low music.
Yeah.
Earth tones and blacks and exactly.
Absolutely. Well, right on. Q. Thanks for doing this. And we've been doing, this is putting you on the spot a little bit, but we've been doing a recommendation along with plugs. Do you have anything you want to recommend? Anything you've seen lately?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you one thing that I've been watching, and we talked about it. We talked on Bird Road. I tried to get you to watch it. It wasn't really your cup of tea, but I think for the people listening out there will like it. And not enough people are reading it, or I'm sorry, not enough people are listening to it. That's not right either. Not enough people are watching it.
I'm like, wait, what did you get me to?
All types of media, dude. I'm just shoving media down your throat. I've got a book up your ass. I've got iPod pods in your ears and my screen in your face. No, there's a TV show on Amazon that I think most people are generally aware of because it was one of the first Amazon shows that they promoted. And then it kind of fell off the radar, and it's, I think, about to do its third season. It's called The Patriot, and it's not, I'm just going to tell you, if you haven't seen it yet, it's not what you think it is. It's something completely different. It's like it's like if Homeland was directed by Wes Anderson. It's just this quirky, weird, rich world. Give it a few episodes, because it takes time to build up the world and the characters and the neuroses that occupy them, and awesome show, The Patriot. It's got 2 seasons out on Amazon.
That's a great description, by the way. I think that's really appropriate from the one episode I watched. If Homeland was directed by Wes Anderson, I like that.
It's a great study. It's something you don't see that much. It's a study of male intimacy and how men are friends and how they communicate and how they how they work together. And you don't see that's not a topic that's in vogue right now. It's not something that, I mean, honestly, nobody's checking for that right now, but it's still something important, and it's really artfully and well done. So
Right
The
on.
Patriot on Amazon.
Very cool. Well, why don't you tell people where they can find Bird Road real quick?
Bird Road is everywhere that podcasts are found. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Casts. We're on birdroadpodcast.com. So that's what's up. Check out our upcoming episode where we had our live show that we're editing now. We're going to post pretty soon with Billy Corbin, the director of Cocaine Cowboys, and Nucleus Shelton, a very prominent, well-known activist who works with AFL-CIO on organizing labor here in Miami. We had our first Miami show. We're a Miami podcast, and that's a great way to jump into if you haven't listened to Bird Road yet, that's a great way to jump into it. Check the feed. It should be at the top.
Absolutely. Well, right on. Let's find out if this RodeCaster recorded this.
Oh, no. Fuck. God damn it.
Welcome to the world's first podcast. Well, the first one they've done. Gas Money Pictures presents Filmmakers On, a podcast for filmmakers by filmmakers about the ever-changing media landscape. Each Thursday, hosts Jay Horton and Sean Alden Reed speak to a media insider about their journey through the industry and how to survive without going crazy. Segments like What Are You Watching?, Media Roundup, and It's Your Turn give Jay and Sean the opportunity to do their favorite thing, discuss what's going on in movies, TV, and media, and mainly disagree. Filmmakers On is available on your favorite podcasting app or at www.filmmakerson.com. And check them out on social media at Filmmakers On. All right, so that does it for today's episode on the Standoff at Sparrow Creek. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for bearing with us with the audio. I don't know about that RodeCaster Pro. It's kind of cool. I get the particular demographic for who would use it, people who aren't really familiar with computers but want to jump into making podcasts. But I mean, I'm a computer guy, so I know what I'm doing with a computer. I can record it on the computer and have full flexibility of making these things sound as good as possible. So with that said, I just want to remind you all to please make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together on your podcast app of choice. You could also rate and review us on iTunes. You can follow us on social media at PiecingPod. And I would suggest that you come join our Piecing It Together, a movie discussion group, not only because it's a great place to come talk about movies, but because we have a contest going on right now to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of the show. The header image is this big old pile of puzzle pieces, and in that pile of puzzle pieces, I have photoshopped in 28 different movies. There are little puzzle pieces of movie posters. And if you can find all 28 and email me, you're going to win a $20 Fandango gift card. I think that's a pretty damn good prize. So you should definitely join our Facebook group. Again, it's called Piecing It Together, a movie discussion group. And you can also find a link to it here in the show notes. So make sure you join and try to win yourself a $20 gift card. So that's it for today. I want to remind you to also go check out that live episode of Bird Road. It was a lot of fun to do. You can find Bird Road on all the same podcast apps that you find Piecing It Together, and also on the website birdroadpodcast.com and Bird Road Podcast on all the social media as well. So that does it for today. I'm going to leave you guys with a piece of music. I think the track Crystallize is something that feels like it could have been in a movie like The Standoff at Sparrow Creek. So why don't we leave you with that? Crystallize, which you could find on my free album, Like Ashes, and it's also available on Spotify as a single. So check out Crystallize, and we will be back on Friday with another new episode of Piecing It Together. It's 2 episodes this week. Talk to you guys soon.
and all points west.